Thank you to DistroKid for sponsoring this video and supporting my channel. If you make beats, then you know the importance of standing out. So today I want to share with you 3 of my favorite techniques that'll help make your beat arrangements more interesting so that you can create a more engaging experience for your listeners. Okay, so here I have a beat, and before we discuss the tactics, let's take a listen because I used all 3 in this arrangement. If you can guess what they are, then feel free to comment down below. Here we go. Alright, so the first technique is to use contrast. Now, contrast basically means to be significantly different when compared to one another, and for our purposes, this boils down to making sure that you include enough variation in your sections. Now, one of my favorite things to do when creating beats is to make it super easy for the listener to know in what section of the song they are in, and I do this by adding or removing elements to create that contrast. Now, typically I start all of my beats by creating the main part, so usually the chorus, and then strip things away to create other sections. So then if we take a look here at my chorus, you can see all of the elements for my beat that are active, which include a guitar loop, some keys, a pad, 2 plucks, a synth bass, a bass guitar, and then my drums. If we then switch over to my verse, you can see that the guitar loop has been altered to be shorter. For the first 4 bars, I dropped both plucks and the synth bass, and then for the last 8 bars, I dropped the pad, I brought back one of the plucks, and I also brought back the synth bass. Let's take a listen to that again. So as you can see, by removing or adding elements, you are helping create that contrast between your sections, which ultimately helps keep your listener informed on where they are in the song and of course engaged. The second technique to help make your arrangements more interesting is to add some movement. I'm going to be doing a whole separate video soon on this because it's that important to me, but in short, if you want to keep things interesting, then start to add more rhythmic elements. Now, movement can come in many forms, but let's take a look at some of the ones that I used in this beat. Now, the first and probably the easiest is to add some sort of percussion to your drums. Obviously, it depends on the genre, but when appropriate, I love to add some sort of shaker or percussion loop to keep the beat moving, and in this beat, this is exactly what I did. Now, the loop in this case is a tambourine-esque type of thing, and alone, it sounds like this. Notice how it's not too loud, it's not overpowering, it's not the main thing, but it does add some movement. So let's take a listen now with and without to see what it's actually doing. So what I'll do is I'll start with it off, and then I'll switch it back on throughout the chorus. As you can hear, without it, the beat sounds a bit stale and boring, but once we bring it back into the mix, it starts to add some new life. Another way to incorporate movement into your productions is to add some modulation to your sounds, and one of my favorite ways to do this is to add a tremolo effect. A tremolo effect essentially creates consistent changes in volume, which results in a sort of like trembling effect that is fantastic for movement. In some cases, this type of modulation can already be present on a particular patch that you selected, like the one on this pad from Serum. If it's not already there, then it is super easy to add by inserting a tremolo plugin. Studio One comes with a great native one called Xtrem, and once you add it, you can easily adjust the rate or timing of the tremolo, the mix, and even the LFO shape. Now, for this particular beat, I used a third-party plugin called Kickstart on my keys, which essentially does the same thing. Now, without it, my keys sound like this. With it, now, as you just saw, I love to use tremolos on my pads and my keys, but I definitely encourage you to experiment. Finally, the last technique on this list is to use automation. Automation is an extremely powerful tool that can help you create interest and even be combined with other elements to really take things up a notch. Now, automation is basically setting up your DAW to automatically control certain parameters such as volume, panning, and even filters. Let's take a look and see what I did here. Now, the first use of automation in this beat was in the intro, where I used an EQ to filter out my guitar loop and then used automation to open it back up again. Let's take a listen. For this specific scenario, I used a third-party EQ, but you can do this easily with any EQ. So let me go ahead and just replicate this by using the native EQ from Studio One called Pro EQ. Okay, so the first thing that I want to do in this case is to create a filter shape. So for me, that would be some sort of like bell curve. So let me go ahead and play it first. That sounds good. I'm gonna go ahead and pin this plugin so it doesn't move by clicking this little icon here, and I'm gonna move it to the top. Now, go back to your timeline, and on the top left here, you're gonna wanna click on this icon next to the wrench tool. So click on that, and that will open the automation lanes for each track. From here, go to the track where the EQ is placed and click on the little rectangle drop-down menu. Now, normally it would say display off, but I already messed with it, so mine looks a little differently. But go ahead and click on that. Now, when you do this, in most cases, you will be presented with two immediate options, one for volume and one for pan, but you can add more by hitting the Add Remove button at the bottom. From here, you will bring up the automation window, and on the right-hand side, drop down the inserts panel and choose whatever insert you want to automate. Now, because I only have one active on this channel, this is the only option that I will get, but of course, I do want to use this Pro EQ. Finally, once you're here, pick what parameter you want to automate. So in my case, I want to automate the high cut, and then I'm gonna click on frequency, and finally, go ahead and hit add. Once you are here, you can start to draw your automation on the automation lane. So let me do that real quick by placing 2 points here where I want to start, and then 1 where I want to end. Now, because we had already set the EQ high cut band to the starting frequency, any points that I initially add on here will already be at that starting frequency, so I don't have to do anything for my starting point. For my end point, all I have to do is basically just raise it so it opens up, and then we're basically done. Let's take a listen. Another instance where I used automation in this track was to turn the tremolo for the keys on and off. I wanted the tremolo to only come on during the chorus and the verses, and to turn off during the intro and the breakdown. Here's what that sounds like. Now, the way I did this was basically to automate the bypass switch on the tremolo effect, and you can do that easily by right-clicking on the bypass button and then hitting Edit Automation Bypass. Once you do that, like before, you can start to draw your automation on the automation lane to get exactly what you want. But there you have it, 3 of my favorite techniques to help make your beat arrangements more interesting. In summary, we covered using contrast to differentiate between different sections to keep things fresh, creating movement with things such as percussion and modulation, and then finally using automation. Now, once you have your beats the way that you want them to sound, the next step could be to share them with others, and you can do that with DistroKid, the sponsor for this video. DistroKid is a digital distributor, and for $20 a year, it is by far the easiest way to share all of your music to streaming platforms such as Apple Music, Spotify, Tidal, TikTok, and many more. There are many great features about DistroKid, but one of my absolute favorites is their splits and recovery recoupment feature. When we work with others, we all want to make sure we're properly compensated, and DistroKid makes it extremely easy to do this. After you upload your song or project to DistroKid, you can go to the Splits tab on the top menu here to add collaborators so they can get paid too. Collaborators will need a DistroKid account, but if they're not already a member, DistroKid will automatically email them a discount code and get them 50% off their membership, along with a code that they can enter to join the splits. Conversely, if you are the one being invited, you can add your code here and join the splits for that release. But okay, once you're here, select the release that you want to split. So for this example, I'm going to choose my last beat EP, which was Muse, and hit next. From here, start to add collaborators by entering their email address on a per song basis and then adjusting the revenue share percentages. In addition, you can add a recoupment, which basically sets it up so certain collaborators don't start to get paid until others get reimbursed for any costs. This can be a good solution if someone fronted the money for some of the costs of the release. If you're interested in reaching more people with your music, then click the first link in the description to sign up for DistroKid and get 7% off your first year. But that's it for me. I hope you enjoyed this video. Now, the examples shown today were just a few, but these 3 techniques can be used in many more ways, so definitely experiment. Thank you once again to DistroKid for sponsoring this video. The link to get 7% off your first year will be linked down below. Thank you for your time, and I'll see you on the next one.